Hello. As the Security Operations Center, or SOC, groans under the weight of cyber attacks, technologies to help solve that problem are riding to the rescue, especially artificial intelligence. So I spoke to a range of industry experts to find out more about how that works. So can you tell me more about where AI is a breakthrough technology for the SOC?
So it's interesting, both AI and machine learning, technologies that are in every aspect of the SOC. The way I like to look at it is it helps us go from hindsight to foresight. If you take things like malware detection, they used to be pattern-based. You were matching some patterns. Now you're trying to actually look at behaviors of applications, behaviors of endpoints. So I see them everywhere, and I think this is what's going to make us a lot better.
I think that right now when you look at the SOC, there are certain areas, especially the low-hanging fruits, where AI can actually help you quite a lot. And you see it across different places. First of all, identifying kind of the needle from the haystack. So that's probably almost one of the easiest first things that you would do with AI, because AI is used a lot to take a lot of data and kind of cluster it and classify it and try to find the outliers. So that's one big place that AI can help. Although I have to say that right now it's not very mature, and it will be much more mature moving forward. The other place where AI can actually help is reducing the work for the analyst. So once the analyst identifies an alert, a real incident, then the analyst goes through a lot of mundane tasks where you basically do the same thing over and over again, like get the reputation of a certain IP and check the prevalence of a file and check logs and all of those things. And instead of the analyst doing it manually, you actually do that automatically via predefined or learned actions. And this is something where AI is really good at, by looking at already existing actions in the history and learning from them, and then feeding it back to the analyst whenever it's needed. And so you see a new incident, you look in the history and say, hey, you know what? In the previous 5 incidents, we saw those sequences of actions that actually helped. Let's do that for you right now.
Can you give me some examples of AI in the SOC today?
Yeah, AI being used to augment the human intelligence of what decisions they're making. For example, it's correlating disparate alerts and events that may be happening in different locations or at different severity levels that a human may not even pay attention to. So AI captures all that, creates the linkages between those different alerts, and is able to aggregate those into things we actually call an insight. An insight is not the resolution that this definitively is happening. What it is a collection of the activity that now a human can use the subjective capability to go, this is relevant for me, my organization, and at this time.
Let's take the malware detection that I talked about, right? The way it worked for many, many years is you had signatures of the virus or spam, and then the software checked against these signatures. Now this works for malware that you already know about, something that you've encountered in the past. But really what you're looking for are things like the zero-day vulnerabilities. You're looking for how would you detect something that you haven't encountered before? So what malware detection algorithms are using now is more looking for patterns. So if you take process, you can look at how it exchanges information, whether it's copying files over to a remote destination. You can use these behaviors to really detect that something is wrong, and you can classify the harmful files versus the harmless ones.
What are the key AI technologies? We've got machine learning, we've got analytics. What are any others?
Most of them are that. So you have like deep learning, you have the guided stuff, the directed stuff, or unsupervised learning, which is, I think, really just beginning to get, people are beginning to use all of that. But, the standard like classification problems, and clustering and all of those are pretty much what you see today. And so companies like Silence, for example, use a lot of, it's like your standard classification, right? Get a lot of samples and then, based on various attributes, just classify them. And then others just look at lots and lots of events and then try to correlate and find the right things to do. And then others like us basically just try to look at analyst intents and actions and derive the value from there.
Where is AI having the biggest impact? Is it time to detect? Is it triage?
The most impact that AI is making in the SOC is truly faster time to triage. Because in the end, that's exactly what the human is trying to do. And again, we see lots of reports that talk about a compromise hasn't been found for 100 days or 150 days, depending on which report. But with AI, it's making that time go from months to minutes.
So definitely, I think today it's definitely in the detect, right? So when you look at detect, there's just a mass of events out there. And it's almost impossible for a human being to just look at all of them. And AI is doing a pretty decent job in highlighting what's interesting. It's still not, again, it's still not in this place where you can just take the human out of the equation. You need to highlight the right stuff, but then allow the human to actually look at it, interact with it, and decide if it's like a real one or false positive. But without that, it's almost impossible, right? You just drop all the things that, that bury you under those alerts. The other aspect, I think, is prevention. AI actually is doing pretty good stuff in determining behavior on the endpoint is this file behaving correctly, and also is this file looks like something suspicious. And so that's I think the other stuff. I think detection is by far right now the biggest one, and we're obviously trying to add the whole response to that benefit to the analysts to kind of take a lot of the manual tasks and automate them away.
AI is going to have an effect on many different aspects of protecting us. So if you think about Facebook recently, and they had to put in place system that could look at or could prevent fake news, they hired 10,000 people for this. Now this is obviously just a quick reaction. What AI will eventually do is allow machines to do that first level of analysis. So it will cut down the number of people that you need. It also will help in reducing the time to triage. If you take any operations, right? If you have an issue, if you have a production issue, the first thing people do is they get on a call and they try to figure out what's the root cause and go through this analysis. With AI, you could have this at your fingertips, hopefully even before that issue happens.
And what's next in AI for the SOC?
You've probably heard about user and endpoint behavioral analytics. And just to explain a little bit, if somebody steals your password, unless they know exactly your access patterns, your system can detect that it's not you. Similarly, you can do the same thing for applications. If you knew the application's behavior, and let's say we as application developers gave you a signature of our behavior, you could factor that in to figure out when an application is compromised. So this is where I think the next step will be. It'll be taking some of the behavioral analytics that we learn and that we use for users all the way into the application domain.
Looking in the next few years, it's just more optimizations of what's happening right now. So you'll see a lot of faster algorithms, maybe more accuracy, less false positives, all of those things. But the big bets is actually what I call unsupervised learning. So just throw the bunch of events on enough compute power to let AI learn by itself, and this will eventually get to a place where you actually identify the real positives and not false positives or false negatives. And so I think it's still probably a few years ahead of us, 20, but that will be the real game changer.
I think AI for the SOC will expand beyond just the analytics of the alerts and the logs and the information that's being ingested, but actually start to automate the activity upon rectification of whatever it's seeing. To date, most things are still provided to what's called a playbook, or something that allows a human to start taking physical action. I think in the next couple of years, the confidence of the SOC analyst will start to trust the decisions that are being made and allow AI to automatically make the configurations that rectify the situation without their involvement, but with their supervision.
So AI can and will deliver big benefits according to the industry. The only question, they say, is when.